Okay, this is the big one. This is the goodie. We did the work. Now we need to have some fun. Secondary action. Someone came up and asked me after the lecture, like, "Hey, where's that piece of paper where I can sign up and get work?" I forgot to put it out, so please remind me after. But like, wait long enough after I'm done talking that I don't think you're just here for the work. Okay, secondary action. This is a topic that is really near and dear to my heart, and there's no demos. There's only me. There's only my demonstrations for this, so we don't have to switch back and forth, which is nice. Because this is very, very, very grounded in performance, and it's grounded in acting. I should probably take this off. And what secondary action allows you to do, in contrast with how few people actually use it to its full potential, it is just heartbreaking to me. Okay, because secondary action really is the gate to subtext. Okay, the gatekeeper and the keymaster. There is no Dana, only Zool. I have a little brother who's crazy. I think I told a story about my crazy little brother before, but every once in a while when we were riding in my parents' car, we'd be sitting, and he'd be sitting in the chair next to me, he'd be going like this. So he was probably a little too young to see that movie. Changed him forever. But that I always knew, oh man, how can you mistake that? That's nothing else but that, is it? Okay, so secondary action. Let's get crazy here, you maniacs. Let's define it, because the problem with secondary action is that you get varying different definitions no matter, depending on where you look. If you look on Wikipedia, it's weird. It actually brings up what I think is actually really overlap. I think it says like if there's a horse galloping, the mane flapping would be secondary action. I don't really know how that applies. And even in The Illusion of Life, sadly, I think that they oversimplify it and they kind of gloss over it and talk too much about performance in a unified way than a separated way, which is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to separate performance and primary action from secondary action. And so the definition is very important, because I don't want you thinking we're going to talk about, hair flapping right now. Here's what I came up with. Performance that is subtly staged to support the overall idea in a scene. Okay? Now the only reason that I said subtly staged, because secondary actions can be very broad. The only reason I said subtly staged is because what we're going to talk about a little bit later, which is what you do with secondary action. The action in and of itself is not the performance. So we're going to separate acting from action, and then we're going to put it back together. So this word subtly does not mean necessarily small. It means the staging is done in such a way that it is accessing the subtext. It is displaying something much deeper than the face value. Okay, so why learn about secondary action? Obviously, if all you ever do is the face value performance that is available to you, you're missing out on an entire world of performance. Okay, and not only that, but you'll run out of gestures quickly. I remember at the October CGCon, I told everyone, do the 11-second club. Anyone who attended in October and tried out the 11-second club? That one person in the back? All right, well, he's top of the list for the job.
A t-shirt would do.
T-shirt? Secondary action. So you'll notice if you try out the 11-second club, which I recommend everybody does, because it's just, as much time as you can put towards it is as much practice as you'll get. So you shouldn't consider not finishing your 11-second club entry as failure. You should just open up a new scene, get a new piece of dialogue, put your brain through the paces of, coming up with a performance, and work on it as much as you can. Okay? So just because you can't finish doesn't mean you should be doing that kind of practice. What you'll notice, though, is if you don't have access to secondary, or if you haven't developed your own personal access to secondary, you'll run out of gestures very quickly. So what people normally do is they stage two characters kind of facing each other, or 3/4 the camera, opened up, and then, they're just gesturing towards each other. I don't know. Do you want to go over there? Let me think about it. Well, okay. So you run out of gestures very, very, very quickly if all you're doing with your character, all the action that you're creating, we're going to separate the two right now. All the action you're creating is not, it doesn't have any secondary. You're going to run out of gestures that are 100% face value. That way. There's no way that this can mean that, right? So this is face value. This is pointing in a direction, right? But this, what am I doing? Am I scratching my chin, or am I thinking about something? All right, so we're going to talk about the difference in just a second. All right. Also, it's far more realistic to keep up a secondary action anyway, because humans are moving all the time. We normally interact with people at work while they're working, and we're talking and emoting with them all the time. And that's a really great place to start in terms of your observation. So I'm going to encourage you guys a couple times through this lecture to become better or more frequent observers of motion. Okay, so those are the reasons why we want to start talking about secondary. Secondary action can be related to the scene. For instance, a nurse sewing up a wound on a soldier as she's talking to the soldier about how stupid he is going into battle. Okay? Secondary action can be unrelated. Like a cop walking through a crime scene, stirring a cup of coffee. How many times have you seen this? Shooter came in through northwest entrance, popped two and the big guy. Looks like we had one more person in the room, escaped out the back. How many times have you seen that? Where you have something that's going on throughout the entire scene, but it's completely unrelated. We're going to talk about, I did that very vanilla though. I did that, without any coloring. All right, and we're going to talk about coloring in a sec. But it was just very straight up, just going back to my little secondary action. Okay? So it can be related. The rule is if it's related, you need to remember to stage it so it doesn't take over the scene. Okay? Now, again, that doesn't mean, staging is a very complex concept. Okay? Staging has everything to do with everything from the broadness of the gesture to the shot before, how much context are you bringing into the scene, and what is the audience's relationship to the characters. What does the character have to do to actually break outside what is expected of them. Some characters, like Eeyore, if Eeyore even just stood up straight and said hey guys, let's go to the beach, you'd freak out because Eeyore is big sourpuss all the time, right? Whereas me, for instance, if I say, hey guys, let's go to the beach, that was no difference. for me. So staging has an incredible amount of complexity to it, and I do mean the full definition of staging. I don't just mean like your composition or the broadness of your gesture. I mean, you need to remember to stage it so it doesn't take over the scene. Okay, someone trimming the sails on their boat, right? You know, right here. You can have an entire scene, and this is a very broad gesture. You can have an entire scene right here that's filled with subtlety, even though I'm doing all of that motion. Is that trimming the sails? I don't know. It looked like I was actually, you know, lowering a bucket on my head. Sorry about that. I have, you know, a lot of examples here. So some of the examples are kind of out there because I wanted to give you guys a lot of. In this lecture, I want to give you a lot of different examples, so that if you're starting animation or you're doing like the 11-second club and you're feeling your way through performance, that you have like a list of, you know, I think there's like about 45 different ideas for secondary actions that you can do. But some of them are like trimming the sails, and I don't know what it looks like. So when it's unrelated, we have this huge list of rules and tricks and ways to infuse the subtext into the secondary action. All right, so related is interesting, okay, but unrelated is even more interesting, okay. But that shouldn't make it so that all you ever do is unrelated. You know, someone bursts into a police station, there's someone on a pogo stick. That's not, you know, that shouldn't be a goal for you. Okay. It can be single or it can be repetitive. If it's single, normally it's related. If it's unrelated and it's single, we're not normally interested in that. Okay? So it's when it's a single action, it should contribute entirely. And I think the example they gave for secondary action in The Illusion of Life is a character wiping a tear as he turns. You know, like it's a sad scene and they wipe a tear. The main action is turning away from, you know, something that's sad that they don't want to look at. That is staged in a way that no one can mistake what's going on. Oh, this is terrible over here. I'm going to turn away. But the secondary action, you know, is something on top of that. When it's single and contributing entirely, we're interested in it. Okay, but unrelated and single doesn't interest us. That's the difference between this. Okay, I'm talking to you, and let's say you're all my employees. Okay, and I'm telling you, I'm trying to get to the point where you might lose your jobs. So single and unrelated would be if I have an itch and I scratch it. Okay, guys, I have some bad news. You all might lose your jobs. Okay, so that's single and unrelated. If it's repetitive, we have more opportunities to reveal subtext. Okay, so instead of just scratching, very, very subtle difference between scratching and like touching my arm. Okay, so there was no performance coming through in that scratch, but there is performance if I say, okay, guys, there's some bad news. You might lose your jobs. So I did a couple of the tricks that we have right there, and I'll tell you everything I did right there in a second. Okay, so single and related, you know, like turning and wiping a tear, that's interesting. In that sad scene as well, turning and scratching, it doesn't contribute to the scene. Okay, and how much more, for instance, how much more subtext can you imagine being infused in a scene? Like, you remember, you know, everyone's seen this scene where the mob boss is, you know, sitting at a table, and someone comes in and they've got like bad news, and he's like got a bowl of spaghetti like as big as like a, you know, like a pool, and they're pigging out in it, and it's like all the performance you need is in the eating of that spaghetti. Something might happen where, the person might, they're eating, the person might say something, and then they put down the fork. It's like, oh shit, right? And it's like, you wouldn't think, oh darn, when someone puts down their fork after picking out on spaghetti, right? It's the subtext, so we'll talk all about that. That's actually an interruption. We'll talk about interruptions in a second. So it can be single or repetitive. Character wipes a tear as he turns away from someone who maybe just died. Character is ironing clothes as they have a serious talk with someone. So this would be repetitive. And I love repetitive because repetitive gives us so much opportunity for subtext. Okay? Character ties her daughter's shoes as she listens for news on the radio. Another repetitive thing. There's different actions that are going on, but basically, let's say a bomb goes off. Her husband's in the military and she's listening for news. All of that, action while she's listening, splitting her attention. In that transition, that's where you're really going to reveal your performance. Character fishes through a drawer as he talks on the phone. Another example of, we split our time, or we split our attention all the time. And if you think about it like a processor, our brain only has a certain amount of CPU cycles, right? So it's kind of like that play that happens between the things that we're splitting our attention between that reveals the performance. You're on the phone and you're talking to someone, maybe you're just chit-chatting, okay? You're going through some mail and you don't know how, but a old postcard from a long-lost love, it got into the mail somehow. So you might be just sitting like this, yeah, I didn't think so either. And then that change, that little movement, that little alteration of the secondary action is all you need to really speak the subtext of that scene. And what I'm trying to get, I'm giving as many examples as I can. And I'll actually, as part of the download that I'll put on my blog, I'll actually put this entire list that I have, all the examples that we've come up with. What I'm trying to do is just try to give example after example to make it so that, like, if the 11-second club next month, it's like, yeah, okay, well, it's nice talking to you. Oh my God, I gotta go. That you don't just have the character, like standing, so maybe like split screen on the phone, like, hey, okay, well, it was nice talking to you. Okay, well, I gotta go. All that just primary upfront face value, one-to-one kind of action towards the phone. It would be my dream come true if I saw some entries where the person talking on the phone and something secondary takes their attention. So they're talking on the phone and then they see, it's like a housewife, like Desperate Housewives, and they see like the guy that just moved in walking in front of her house with his shirt off. And so she's like, yeah, okay, well, it was great talking to you. I gotta go, bye, and then rushes out. So that's the difference that we're trying to elicit from you guys. All right, and it's not just coming up with a history for the scene, okay? Because the history of the scene or the history of the characters, like in the scene, is not going to tell you what they're doing at that moment. It shouldn't be that simple. Oh, this is a seamstress. Oh, they're going to be sewing. It's not that simple. Okay, so we're always in the middle of something. So let's separate acting from action a little bit more. Okay, we're always moving, okay, but we're not necessarily purposefully contributing to our performance. Like, we don't even know we're performing. I'm talking to you, you're talking to me. We don't know that, like, we should, do anything differently with our hands or our bodies or how we're working with something. It's not a conscious thing, okay? And so that is actually part of the challenge. Part of the challenge is that in your performance choices, you need to make it seem like it's effortless or not a cognizant choice of the character. Okay, but what we are doing, even though we're not thinking about it, is contributing immeasurably to the information that we're conveying. Okay, people who are experts at watching body language and observing people know this. Okay, public speakers know this. Motivational speakers know this. They know how to, do things that are going to make the audience feel like they're getting empowered. They know what poses to take. They know how to move their bodies, and they know how to like hit a pose and be more effective. Hitler was an incredible public speaker. It's really, really sad, but if you watch it, like he's slamming his fist and using all these things that gets people angry. You know, the exact same effect, the opposite effect, basically, of a motivational speaker, you know, is what he does. You know, they make you feel good about yourself and safe and want to do something. He made people scared and afraid and out of control. Same thing. There's a guy named Darren Brown who I saw first, I think, on Discovery or Learning Channel, and I think he's British, and you may have seen or heard of him, but I researched him a little bit more after I saw this, but he can literally, just using body language, like make you give him like your wallet and your phone and your watch. It's crazy. He'll walk up to, he show these videos of these people on the street, he walks right up to them, and he asks them for directions. But as they're talking, he like takes their hand and shakes it, and then like turns his hand and like asks them like kind of in an interrupting way, but just using body language. And by the end of it, he's walking away with their keys and their phone and their watch and their wallet. And then the people are like, what the heck just happened? And they go after him, and he gives it back because he's a nice guy. But he understands. I might not. After I saw that, I was like watching it over and over. I'm like, okay, first, okay, turn the wrist. Okay, then, oh God, I'm never going to get this. I need some wallets. No. So he obviously understands this. So if a person who's alive, search for him, his name's Darren Brown, D-E-R-R-I-N, Brown. If he can get you to give you everything you need to survive during the day, just with his subtle, staged secondary actions, you gotta know that it's powerful. You gotta know that this is where you want to be. It's where you want to be in performance. Okay. So most of the time, what we're doing with our bodies is far from the way that animators learning stage their actions, which is again like, you know, either facing each other or like opened up 3/4 to camera and just, you know, using simple gestures to emphasize like pieces of the dialogue. Okay. So action is the foundation of performance, and it is how we, you know, obviously we're going to build our performances, but understanding the difference between secondary action and your primary action is where you're going to start shining. So actions obviously speak louder than words. So this is even more powerful than dialogue, secondary action is. That might be like a woo moment for some of you. I don't see anyone going woo. Maybe you're doing it inside because you're embarrassed. I'll do it for you. Yeah, more powerful than dialogue. Ooh, let's go louder. I need a little sauce. That's refreshing. More powerful than dialogue. Extra movement doesn't always count as secondary. So even though we're moving all the time, it rarely contributes because extra movement doesn't necessarily count as secondary. Actions need commitment to be believable. This is the most important rule in improv. I learned most of what I know about secondary action before I started applying it to animation from improv. I'm not sure what your guys' improv choices are out here, but in LA, almost all of the improv schools, and there's like 6 in like a 2-mile radius, all pull heavily from the studios because animators really like to get involved in this, and I got involved, and I really, if you have the opportunity, it's not scary. You don't have to perform just for this reason. Okay, that actions need commitment to be believable. Has anyone ever watched a movie and your eye immediately goes to like a background character who's supposed to be like mining for gold, and they're going like this? You see it? Or like people who are supposed to be fighting, like the Braveheart's the worst for this. It's really sad. Like in the background of Braveheart, there's people like running up to each other, and then like they're on the same team, and then you know, it's really really bad for that. So actions have to have commitment to be believable. And in improv, commitment comes in a lot of different forms. But in animation, it ties into a lot of the same things. Okay, there's an improv game that what it is that someone comes into a scene and they decide what they're going to be doing. So let's say it's brushing your teeth. All they do is one part of that action. Okay, so let's say it's get out the toothbrush. That's it. Then they're done. Everyone claps and they go sit down. And the next person has to come up, do exactly what they did, and then add one part of that action to the scene. All right. So next person takes the toothbrush out and also picks up the toothpaste. Next person comes out, maybe picks up the toothbrush, picks up the toothpaste, and unscrews the cap. Next person also unscrews the cap, then puts the toothpaste onto the toothbrush. Next person puts the cap back on top of the toothpaste. Next person puts it down. Next person comes up, turns on the water. Next person puts the water onto the toothbrush. Next person puts it in their mouth. Okay, and it's a far cry from what normally beginning improv students and beginning animators take into consideration when they're staging an action. Okay, we're just talking about action right now. Remember, so normally it's like this: they walk out and say, "Okay, I'm gonna brush my teeth." It's just like, what the heck? Like, where'd that come from? Whereas you need to get up there, you need to take it out, you need to pick up the toothpaste, you need to unscrew it, put the cap down, put a little bit of toothpaste on there, pick the cap back up, put it back down, turn on the water, put a little bit of water on there, and turn it off, and start brushing. So much more real. The audience just starts feeling more involved in the scene. When you commit to your actions, your audience will be instantly engaged. Because what we were told in improv is you're going to be terribly if you try to get up there and be funny. Like, oh, I've got a potato in my head. You know, no one's going to think that's funny. You don't have to laugh, it's not funny. Okay, you can laugh. So if you try and go up there and try to say funny stuff, you're going to fall flat on your face. What the audience wants is real people reacting to real situations, and if you commit to your actions, it's extremely real for the audience. So you need to commit to the actions that you choose for your animated characters. Okay, if it's a character, the secondary action that has probably the strongest ingrained schema in humans' minds, just because we've seen it so often to mean so many different things. Anyone want to guess what that is? It's like the strongest secondary action, most frequently used for this. Anyone want to guess? No one wants to guess? Breathing? Breathing is not secondary. Actually, breathing, we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Touching the face of the hair. Blinking.
Touching the face and the hair. Close. Think of a more contrived action. Swallowing. For me, it's smoking. Because in Hollywood, in old Hollywood, it was just like, roll camera, wait, get her a cigarette, and this would be right there. All of the gesturing that you do on top of smoking a cigarette, and there's 1,000 different ways to. In film, I should have said in film. In film, it is the secondary action that has the most ingrained. Like, you know, if they change it this way, what that means. You know, if they change it that way, what that means for an audience. So it's like all of the tricks that I'm going to show you in just a second with other secondary actions that you can do are all built into smoking. So it's just, if you have absolutely no idea what to do with your animated character, if you're starting the 11-second club for the first time, like, it's kind of like kids at home don't get mad at me for saying this, but like put a cigarette in their hand and like they'll be like, oh man, I have so much I can do. Just if you go like that. So I'll show you a few of those as well. Okay. So improv has the same rules, and these rules are so powerful that in improv, we're told actually that all you have to do to start a scene is to go on, do an action, and then just commit to it. You don't even have to know what that action is. So sometimes you come out and you're like this. And if you're committed to it, then someone else will get an idea. and they'll come out, and they'll name you, and they'll name the relationship, and then they'll name the action. Because naming the person and then the relationship is more important than naming the action. All right? Anyone just feel like a little letdown when I stopped doing it? Because I did. And that's what the audience does. So someone might come on and see what I'm doing and say, Dad, do you want me to help you, paint that wall? And, I say like, sure, son. And then they'll join me. And then we have a scene and it's going and it's real and it's committed. Someone might come on and see something completely different. Mom, you're never going to kill that spider that way. And that's how the audience gets engaged. And just like you guys did, it's a little funny. The audience will laugh a little bit. But they would not laugh if I was going like this. Where'd the pole go? So committing to your action is of the utmost importance. Okay? Choose actions that offer a lot of opportunity to support. All right, in improv, this is where it kind of like diverges. We don't know what the relationship's going to be. We don't know how this is going to influence and affect our relationship with the person that has just come on board. But you can choose actions knowing what the scene is, and having a piece of dialogue really, really helps. You don't even need a piece of dialogue, though, to use secondary action, and only secondary action to convey the entire subtext of a scene. But it helps if you choose actions that offer a lot of opportunity to support. So, for instance, wiping a tear is a good choice, for the scene where the person is really sad. My character who is kind of like rubbing his shoulder uncomfortably. I say now uncomfortably because I've done it. I could have just said rubbing his shoulder, but he was rubbing his shoulder kind of uncomfortably when he was talking to his employees that was going to fire. For me, that's not as good as and doesn't have as much opportunity as cleaning glasses. Because cleaning glasses has, there's all different sort of broadness of the gesture that you can do. There's all different ways you can do it, and it has the extra added bonus of having to look down while you're doing it. So whenever you can layer your secondary animation into supporting your acting choice, like, oh, I don't want to talk to all of you. I don't even want to be here. I'm not going to look at you. Taking your glasses off and looking down at it is a way you can layer them on top of each other, and then your secondary action is actually kind of supporting your primary more than the other way around. Okay. You can be too broad. Okay, it can take over the scene. Okay, so cleaning, the CEO cleaning his glasses in the middle of the scene is a lot different than cleaning a gun, right? So some of you are not going to have a job in the morning. That's a little too broad, right? That's way too much context. Okay, so let's reconnect the action to acting here. First thing, coloring the action. What that means is that the overall mood of the scene is going to be dictated by the main idea, of course. Okay, so first thing that you can do is let the overall posing invade the mechanics of that motion. Okay, so if normally you'd for instance, cleaning your glasses, if normally you clean it down here on your shirt, all right, maybe if you're super excited and you don't want to take your eyes off somebody, you might clean it up here. This is, hey guys, some of you are going to lose your jobs. This is, wow, Betty, it's nice to meet you. Thanks for coming on this date with me. There's the difference right there. So let the overall mood invade your choices for posing the secondary action. Okay. I go back to in this next section. I go back to the same person over and over. The person whittling wood, I actually came up with it when I was at Ubisoft because it was a good example. If someone's whittling wood, here's like the completely straight back, this is how you whittle wood, right? But if someone's like upset or whatever, they're going to be slumped over. And the most that you can probably let the overall mood invade the pose choice is until like your arms are not free anymore. So you can lean over on your elbows, right? But obviously this is probably the most you can do because you still need your arms free to do the action. So coloring the action only goes as far as you can still get the action done. Otherwise it's going to look like the person is doing something that they would never, ever, ever do. Timing the action. The speed of a gesture is dictated by the action, of course, right? So, like in the whittling example, like to get through wood with a knife, you have to push it at a certain speed, right? Once it gives, the chip is going to fly off and your hand is going to go. So there's no, how creepy would it be if someone could actually whittle wood like that? Like they were like carving butters. That doesn't make any sense. But the way you can change the timing of that action is actually like sort of like in the reload. So someone who's whittling wood, it's going to catch a little bit. So like that. But if someone's like upset, you can go where you can. I'd love to see like Arnold Schwarzenegger or something just have like this piece of wood and just slowly like carve through it. It'd be nice. That's creepier than the CEO. Like some of you aren't going to have a job. Let the timing choice make you brainstorm other ways to do it. If someone's excited, you may never have seen someone clean their glasses up here. Okay, but like cleaning glasses, maybe if there's a really, really anxious person with a really excited scene, they'll actually, get a cloth out and, something like that. So I'm the CEO, I just fired everyone, I'm waiting in my room to see, my office to see if the board is going to come in and fire me as well. I'm not going to slowly do that, or maybe I might. Maybe I've been through a dozen of these cutbacks, and I survived them all. That would be my choice down here. Maybe it's my first time it's ever happened to me. I might take it off and, oh, no coffee, thank you. Something like that. So, the timing has a huge impact on reconnecting action to acting when you change it. Okay, and then. Energy. Let's see. Energy doesn't necessarily just mean like your combination of timing and posing. Energy can mean like if a secondary has overshoot in it, for instance, like it can take the body like for a ride. So like in the whittling example, kind of doing something like that where you're like you are as the animator, but the character is not, purposefully like just like letting that overlap kind of like be a thing for him. You know what I mean? So it's like something like that, where it's not just like a blind amping up of the overlap, because that doesn't look like overlap, but it's really just the energy of the action. Okay, and then obviously posing, but this goes all the way back to the beginning when I said coloring the action. You just want to choose poses for the action that match the acting choice. So let's go a little bit deeper into timing. Timing is the best thing to start on altering the secondary action to match the subtext. Timing is. Okay. So let's really quickly define subtext quickly. The information conveyed beyond the dialogue and performance, the combination of everything a character has decided, reacted, thought, is thinking, and not saying. Okay, so I didn't expect that you guys really needed a definition of subtext. You all pretty much got it, but I thought I'd put it out there. Okay? So when you let secondary speak the subtext, it becomes the gateway to subtext. When you let secondary speak the subtext, it speaks it louder and clearer and more accessible to humans, to a human audience, than anything in the entire world. All right? So why stage a shot, two characters facing each other, or three-quarter, using these weak, overused gestures when you can say everything you need with secondary action? Okay? It's more organic and natural. Okay, so I'm going to do a couple secondary actions that I'm going to alter to speak a little bit more subtext. So, a character rubbing their hands together. I'm just rubbing my hands together. But let's say I'm an intern at a cake company, and there's a delivery, and I'm going to ask if it's my turn to drive the truck. Okay? So without altering the subtext? Cool. Yeah, I've got the address. So does that mean that I'm driving the truck? And then altering. I'm not even going to do as much in my face to support the secondary. I'm going to let the secondary support the action. Ready? Cool. Yeah, so I got the address. So does that mean I get to drive the truck? Okay? Just sped it up. And it says so much more than me getting all goofy with some sort of performance. Let's say your job is to paint figurines. Is that your job? It's weird. Any plumbers out there? Booyah! In the back. Let's say your job is to paint figurines, or you like painting figurines. And someone asks you how you feel about someone. All right? He seems pretty nice, but I don't know, once you get to know him. So that was just straight up painting figurine, no changing, no altering it, right? It was the same performance with changing it. Yeah, I mean, he seems pretty nice at first, but once you get to know him. Okay. Great. That was a great example because, if I do say so myself, because not only are you speaking about, someone that you've met, what you're doing is you're judging a person. You're vocalizing how you feel about this person and connecting that, interrupting that secondary action to judge the thing you have in your hand. Boom, they come crashing together, those performance choices. But audience, 100% on board. They don't even know it. They just feel it. It just happens instantly. A woman braiding her daughter's hair. I'm going to kind of speed through the rest of it. Braiding their daughter's hair. And their daughter is talking about her daddy, but she doesn't know that the mother caught daddy cheating. And they're going to get divorced, but she hasn't told the little girl. So as the girl is talking about, I can't wait to go to the park with daddy, she's braiding her hair, hands start shaking. It's that simple. It's that simple. Setting the table while you're on the phone, and the person who you are forced to invite to dinner, you're setting their place. And you just happen to arrive at their place setting while the person on the phone is talking to you about and Laura just talks and talks and talks. You might have placed everything perfectly, napkin, fork, plate, adjusted the seat, but there you're just gonna just throw it together. Cutting oneself while shaving. That's an interesting one because it's altering the action, and normally we're so careful that you don't do something like that. So normally the audience understands and totally is on board for that moment when it's like you're arguing with your wife, or you're thinking about, you're totally distracted, you're thinking about something else. So it's almost a primary action, but I would say the act of shaving is a secondary action. But when you cut yourself, that is a clear indication to the audience that something's totally wrong or totally changed. Clicking the mouse angrily. How many times have you, you don't even need to be seeing what's on the screen to tell exactly how good someone's work is going. If they're, just working like this, or it's that simple. Fiddling with one's wedding ring. Wedding rings are a symbol. So if it's not even on, that says so much already, right? You're supposed to have it on all the time. Take it off, all that subtext is immediately in front of the audience. Especially if you're like really fiddling with it, or if you're talking to someone, pretty new girl at the office. Yeah, welcome. You enjoying it here? Yeah, everyone is nice. Okay. I'm a creep in all my reenactments. Not in real life, though. A butcher chopping meat while a boy is asking to take his daughter on a date. You don't even have to color that, but you can. And how many times, have you seen the scene where the boy's like, yeah, so anyway, that's why I want to take your daughter on a date. And then, or maybe not, all that subtext, really easy to pick up. The New York butcher shop, the Italian gangster, all of these have so much subtext, like smoking, for instance, that is so ingrained. It probably is a good idea for you guys to choose things like this to start out your exploration of secondary action when you're just getting into it. Okay, so it might seem like cheating, but I really don't think that choosing an easy access point to a new concept or a difficult concept like this one is really cheating at all. So I expect to see 100 entries in the 11-second club next month, in a butcher shop. Even if it's Harry, put on your gloves. I don't want to. Dressing oneself has a lot of built-in subtext. I can just say the difference between throwing clothes on and going one button at a time. How much can you say about that? How terrible that day is when you're watching a scene of a widow put on the black clothes for her husband's funeral, and the difference between that performance and her 40 years before when she was dressing for their first date. It's there's going to be a lot of broad gestures, trying things on and hitting poses and whatever, and the entire time you can still be talking and performing and relating to another character on set or in the scene. So that's why it's secondary. So let's analyze how we're going to color and alter these secondary. We're going to talk about hitches, interruptions, and accelerations. Hitching can mean that you're hesitating. Okay. This is where you're going to speak your subtext. So, with walks, hitching can mean that you're hesitating. You're walking with your buddies, and one of them says, let's skip math class. That's all you need to show. That character didn't have to say anything. You know exactly what that character feels about skipping math class again. They don't need a line. And maybe if he was the only person that did that, everyone else was really excited about the idea, but he hitched his walk. Then you are speaking a lot of subtext that's going to go beyond the scene, because later on they're going to say, hey, let's also trash the computer lab. You're going to look to that guy and expect him to react. So be aware of how much subtext you're actually building into your scene. Other examples of hitching. putting thumbtacks in a wall. I love repetitive actions because repetitive actions have just so much. What happens is you establish kind of like a pattern, and the audience is watching this pattern, and they're getting used to it. And any deviation from the pattern is kind of like minimalist music. Any deviation from the pattern really sticks out. So if I'm talking about how worried I am, let's say I'm just putting thumbtacks in a wall, and I'm talking about how worried I am about my my son who hasn't called in a long time. I'm just so worried about him because he's not one to not call. He always calls. So just that little changing of it is all you need to extremely efficiently support the acting choice. Putting on a tie, putting on a necktie, and thinking about a deal coming up. No dialogue. Another good hitch. Giving car keys to a friend. All right, you good to drive? Okay, fine. Bring it back full. Sending an email. Sending an email that you don't want to send. Another good time to normally type. Just that little hitch speaks volumes about how you're feeling at that moment. Firing a nuclear bomb. I don't know why I wrote that down. I guess people should just hesitate before they do that. Maybe that's what I meant. Yeah, right. The world I live in. Interruptions can mean your attention is elsewhere, or you don't have the extra CPU to continue the action that you used to. Okay? Let's say the guy that's whittling, is supposed to be listening for intruders or something. Okay? You don't have to make him telegraph that motion if you have a very well established secondary. Remember, I'm supposed to be listening for intruders. And all you do is interrupt it. See if it looks like I'm listening. Right? Did it? Okay. Thanks. One I like to do in class at Animation Mentor is spinning the pen. So I'm talking to you, and this actually takes a little bit of concentration. The pen's a little too thick to do it. So what I said about splitting your attention is kind of like you have a certain amount of CPU cycles that you can spare when you're doing a secondary action. So interrupting it, let's say that I'm talking to you and I say something, and then you say something that's very personally insulting to me. Okay? I didn't have to say a word because the more you charge it up, the more you get to cash it in when you alter it. Okay? So that's interruptions. I like this one. The butcher slamming the cleaver down when he hears something he doesn't like. A girl twirling a drink at a bar when she sees a hunky man. It's almost better without props. We're always told in improv, even if you have a prop that can work for what you're doing, don't bring it on board. So when you're finding your actions, don't run around your house and be like, okay, I need a cigarette, I need this, I need that, I need that. Don't prop yourself out. Twirling a drink, not having a good time. She didn't see me. Okay, and then the example I gave of a guy going through mail on the phone, just mindlessly. This is secondary action. We talk about anything on the phone, and then, all that subtext right there. Accelerations. What's on this slide? Hitching is hesitation. Interrupting can mean your attention is out there. Acceleration can mean many things. Excitement, fear, frustration, embarrassment. Excitement, the character the intern that gets to drive the truck this time, speeding up, his hands rubbing together. Fear, a person who's in a parking garage, speeding up, looking through their purse for their keys while they're talking to a person who's coming towards them. Just right there. I don't want any trouble. Speeding it up. Frustration. Making a cup of tea for your grandmother while she's telling you the whole time how wrong you're doing it. Embarrassment. A guy waving a flag at a parade and then look natural. It can even be showing off. Someone, washing his car, and then a hot lady jogs by. Right? Not my car, it's a Volvo. Anytime you are modifying the secondary action, you are speaking the subtext. Choose your secondary actions wisely. Choose the altering, choose the modification even more wisely. Spend more time coming up with how you're going to change it and how you're going to color it. Okay? So, let's go through some more common secondary actions. Walking has a lot of secondary action possible to it. And it is secondary. Walking is secondary because I can be talking to someone and I can be gesturing and I can be, emoting with them and having a relationship. And what I do with my walk can speak a lot of subtext like that hitch that I did. Walking is secondary action, running isn't. Because if you're walking, you can do all that performance. If you're running, you're either running away from something or you're running towards something, and that is your only focus. It would be really weird if you're running as fast as you can something and you turn to someone and say yeah, the stock market is crashing, Right. Ironing is a secondary action. Making a bed is a very difficult secondary action, again, for that kind of broadness. Okay? Ironing, I love going back to ironing because in improv class, the first scene that I got it actually wasn't my choice. I just came onto the scene, and I was just standing there. Enough time had gone by that I just didn't know what to do. Sometimes you just walk out and something happens. But it was a person, they were ironing. And they were just really good with it. A lot of commitment. It wasn't just all messy right here. They would put the iron down. They would adjust the thing. They would flatten it out a little bit. They would pick the iron back up. And a lot of commitment to that action. And then finally, after a minute of me standing there not knowing what to do or say or anything, the person finally said, you really hurt my feelings when you speak like that to me, Mom. So all of a sudden, they made me female and their mother, and I had done something that before, supposedly, I had said something that really hurt their feelings. All of this, it's just, the scene was just fantastic. It was so natural, so easy. I decided my character choice was I didn't care about it, and so what I started doing was a little bit of coloring, like the walk, like I'm Mrs. High and Mighty. And what starts to happen with secondary is that you realize that the term body language is actually the altering of secondary actions on a day-to-day basis. So when you go to a public place and you're trying to watch body language, turns out all you're doing is actually looking at the altering of secondary actions. And that's it. It's that simple. So some other some hands, any menial task, some common secondary actions, fiddling with your own hands, your clothing, or your face, fiddling with an object that you own or are just holding for the moment. Okay, these are all secondary actions that you can just infuse with subtext. Tapping on a desk, rubbing one's own arms or shoulders, hands in pockets. The way you take your hands in, put them in the pockets and take them out is secondary action. Okay, it's a single, it's not repetitive, but it can still be colored. Okay, twirling your hair is another one. Looking at a watch, holding something for someone else. Right? It might not seem like it, but you know, someone hands this to me. You know, there's a big difference between someone handing me something that I'm okay carrying, that I'm okay with, and my wife handing me like the Victoria's Secret, you know, bag. Right? So holding something for somebody else. Feeling for an object. Okay? Feeling for an object, like in your pockets. It's secondary if it's not primary. So for instance, if you don't say like, oh, let me give me a wallet. But if, you know, someone is or like for instance, like a homeless person comes up to you and wants money, and you're walking by, but you just kind of want to signal that you don't have any money. You might be talking to someone and you know, just go like that. Not even performing for the homeless guy, but just in general, kind of like just outwardly. Heads, some common secondary actions, nodding to a rhythm. Some facial movements are secondary, like repetitive or moving expressions, like chewing gum and blowing bubbles. Chewing gum is very easily colored. Eating, you know, we all remember the Italian, you know, gangster in his, you know, bowl of spaghetti, wolfing it down. Whistling. Whistling is interesting because you actually can kind of use the sound that you make. You know, if you're just whistling like Yankee Doodle, right? Or it's a little bit, you know, you can pick up the like the swing to it, right? So it's kind of a little bit of cheating right there, but I won't tell anybody. Licking an ice cream, drinking a cocktail. I love this one. How many have you seen this one? Oh wow! Oh, he's looking. He's looking. All right. Ah, cool. Right? You were trying to act so cool. And it colored the, oh man, it was out of control. It was so colored, it was all color. After that. Put your tongue back in your mouth. Whole body. This is when I reiterate that turns out secondary action is body language. Okay? So, go to the grocery store. Stand after you've checked out at the grocery store, stand on the aisle, and then you have all the aisle of, you know, the row of registers, right? See if you can tell exactly how, like, expensive the groceries are to that person. Because it's different for everyone. Some people can afford to spend $150 on groceries. Some people can't. See if you can tell just by the body language. Or I'm just going to stop saying that word, secondary action. Let's see. If that person can afford it. This person? Yeah, okay. Get their change back. Go. Obviously can. They put the money out, and they're just talking to someone else, and they're having a great time. This person takes out the credit card. That's a bad sign, first of all. Might not be this obvious, you know, might not be this, you know, projected. Like if they flinch when they swipe it, you know that there's, you know, that there's a difference between that person and the person before. So go to this is an order. Go to the grocery store. There's so much observation. It's like an observation factory because you get a new person like 10 rows every like 90 seconds. It's perfect. It's like shotgun, approach. Amazing. Go to the park. See if you can figure out by body language which parents are, by secondary, which parents are new parents and which parents is like their third kid. You can totally tell. They fall down on the ground, pick them back up, coddle them a little bit. Obviously, first parents, they fall down on the ground, get up, All right, go to a playground. See if you can tell by secondary which kids are friends with each other and which kids are like bullies. Okay? And you can. At a restaurant, watch and see which couples are on like a first date. Watch and see which couples are happily married. Watch and see which couples are just going through the motions. And try not to look at their wedding ring or look for any other sign like that. Try to see if you can actually tell. Secondary will tell you everything you need to know. And at work, look how secondary comes into play when like the boss is around or when you're goofing around with your pals. Okay? So again, improvisation, not only does it share a lot of the same rules, but it can be a lot of help for you. So when you're coming up with secondary for your performance choices in, like if you're doing the 11-second club or something like that, take a camera, turn it on, and just go. All right, don't worry about the dialogue. Don't worry about how it's going to be timed down. Don't worry about, like a lot of times people, and you should really, really, really listen to the dialogue, focus on it, just like put it on a loop, fall asleep to it. Absolutely. But during this process, you should not be worrying about the timing of the dialogue or anything like that. You should be worrying about finding a secondary action and just going through the motions and letting your experience color it. Okay? So, find new secondary actions through improv. Kind of just let it intuitively happen. It will happen. Okay? It will improve your reference. Okay? Then watch the video back and looking for the most natural textural events when you color the secondary, and then just mix and match those. Okay? And only then worry about time and impact of the dialogue. Composition and staging. This is kind of a advanced concept. Once you've done a little bit more of this, you need to keep composition in mind. And actually frame the scene so your secondary action doesn't really alter the composition of the main idea. Like, for instance, if you have someone standing right here and the camera's over there, and then the person that they're talking to is right here, right? You wouldn't want them like doing a secondary action that you're just planning on altering, like in front of their face, like in composition. Like, see my shadow, if my hands are right here. It's kind of distracting you from being able to relate to both characters as they're talking to each other and as they're having a relationship. So you need to be a little bit careful in composition. But one thing that is kind of interesting is that you can actually use composition to your advantage when you're doing secondary. And here's how. Everyone got this? I was kidding. My teachers used to ask that. In school. It'd be so funny because it'd be going so fast. And they'd erase it so quickly. It's like, everyone got this? And you'd be like, no, and then you'd be gone. It's almost like this. Everyone got that? Okay. Almost like this. Everyone got this? That was really fun. Okay, so you have a composition, all right, and you probably heard like the rule of thirds, right? So you just don't ever want to compose so that everything is like dead center, right? So this is like the most basic composition like rubric, right? So it's not anything new here, but when you look at your composition, what you can actually do is you can actually charge the screen space a certain way. Like for instance, on the phone, for instance, it's on their elbow and they're holding it right here. But when they hear crazy news, it's not just that they are changing their pose, it's they're moving into a different part of the composition. Wait, what? That makes it so that you're establishing kind of when they're right here on the phone, okay? And then they, what? They maybe grab it with their hand and switch it, that you're actually exiting this area of the composition that had a different energy and a different feeling to it. Okay? Same thing with the example when I had the pen. I'm kind of like charging up that screen space, really, with a lot of action. Meaning that when I stop it, I kind of cash it in. But it always can kind of support like a little bit more energy and a little bit more movement. Meaning if like the person says, and also this, if they insult me one more time, I'm not going to do the exact same altering the secondary action. I might stop it altogether. So I might go, all right, now listen here. You don't talk to me like that. So I purposely charged up the composition with a little bit more energy, and I established that this is the composition that I want, and then I'm moving into that to take advantage of all that work that I've done earlier in the scene. Which is why cuts kind of kill the mood a little bit with secondary, but they're necessary. So a frantic action that a character steps into, putting a halt and retreating into the composition. Same thing, it's like the opposite of stepping into that high energy. You can retreat from the high energy. Accelerating a secondary action and then growing in composition, like your character just getting closer and closer to the camera, like the more frantically they're doing something. And all of these things, really, they're intuitive, right? So you might actually naturally just do that if you were doing a secondary action, but still very good to start being aware of, so you can do it more purposefully. Working a secondary action and then resuming a different approach to it after a revelation. Okay, so this was the smoking cigarette example. So there's so many ways to smoke a cigarette, right? So you can hold it any different way. Some people like hold it in their mouth. Some people actually have their hand on it. So if you establish the one way, the altering of it doesn't have to be the moment. The altering of it can be that everything is changing. Right? So it can be like, I'm thinking one way about a certain thing. Let's say it's about, what I'm going to have for dinner tonight. Or let's say it's something a little bit more important. Like whether or not I'm going to take a job somewhere. And as I establish this, and I use it over and over and over, this is the way that I smoke, and you're seeing it as the way I smoke. But then someone says something, but you've got a baby on the way. You've got to take that job. If I realize that, you're right. So it was just that little change that supports that overall realization on the character's part. So smoking was good. It's really fun. You should actually just try it. Animating it. Pay attention to your silhouette, especially. You make sure that you're not losing everything in foreshortening with your secondary action, like I was saying when you were in the contact demo. Same thing applies here. You've got to have a really nice, strong silhouette, especially to hit those iconic kind of secondary poses that people can recognize, like smoking, for instance. And then one last thing I want to talk about is secondary texture. Secondary can be really powerful non-performance texture. So this is bordering on the thing that I was talking about earlier, which is like, don't have just like a superfluous movement and like just like extra stuff in your scene. However, when it's a secondary action that has been colored or has been changed, or you've done a lot of work with, but they still have to keep it up. Like the example I have to use is someone rowing a boat. You know, if they're still in the middle of the lake, after you change them rowing the boat, or you do a little bit of a hitch or a pause or whatever, you know, they're never going to get out of the middle of the stupid lake unless they keep rowing. So you still have to do that. Secondary as non-performance texture is really, really nice. So the example I love to gave it at Ubisoft as well, and I said I was going to animate it, but I haven't had time to yet. Sorry, bad excuse, right? Is someone rowing a boat, and then they're talking, and they do something like shrug in the middle of a row. So it's really nice non-performance texture to keep that secondary action up, and not to do stop it to do a shrug. So you go like, I don't know. So you get this double kind of mechanic going on the body at the same time. Another example is someone gesturing with their secondary action. So good example is like a mechanic cleaning a carburetor, you know, with a rag. Oh yeah, well what you do is you just go about 2 miles that way, and at the first stone you want to take a right. Now you don't want to take a right at the second stone. You're going to make sure you don't miss the stone. And then so all that secondary action I'm doing, I'm not really changing it, but it does add really, really nice texture. And then maybe, you know, if he says, well, I'm fixing to kill a man, or something, I don't know, it's a cowboy movie, I just made it up. You know, I'll stop it, you know, and really, you know, do some coloring to it. But it's nice to keep it up, keep it going, because it will provide really nice non-performance texture while you're not really cashing in on the subtext of the scene. Just imagine, you know, how cool it would be if the guy is walking down steps and the body mechanics that will happen as he takes each step and cleaning this thing and gestures at the same time. Oh, well, what you want to do is you want to go about, 2 miles down that way. So all of that, it might seem like a monumental task to try to animate all of that, but it's just a really nice challenge to me. Commit to secondary in your gestures. That just means keep it up. Keep up your secondary, because we rarely do something and drop it when we, someone says something to us, and we rarely talk about what we're doing. Someone walks in on, I walked in on the ironing. How unrealistic would it have been if I walked in, the person was ironing. They've got ironing to do. They're not going to go, right? It would be very, very weird. They're going to continue. They might say, yes, but they're not going to stop. So commit to secondary with your gestures. And then breathing, set interaction, and outside stimuli have nice effect on secondary on top of gestures. So that was the example of the guy cleaning a carburetor walking downstairs. All right, cool. So wrap up. Why incorporate secondary? If you don't know, you can leave right now. I just have this I've been a teacher at Animation Mentor for 5 years now, and even in watching, even if all the access to animation you have is like the 11-second club, I just see so much, I might say a majority of the animation that's by new and learning animators is just framed 3/4 and just going through the same gestures. Over there, I don't know, you should, I should, whatever, all that stuff. So this is why you need to learn secondary and incorporate it into your work. Remember, it can be single or repetitive, related or unrelated. We're not really interested in unrelated and single. Because it's boring. Separating acting from action. Remember, all of your actions that you pick, you need to choose ones that commit to the action, explore the action. Don't just think to yourself, oh well, this person's a car mechanic, so I'm going to have them on their back under car. That's it. Really explore and find really potentially colorful actions. Okay. And then when you're connecting your action back into your acting, it will speak subtext through the altering of it. Okay? And then We went through some common secondary actions. Hope you wrote some down. I'll put the list into the pack of files that I include with a download of this lecture if you want it. Remember, improvisation is how you're going to find some really nice coloring of your secondary action when you're just recording video reference and such. Composition, work your composition, of course. And then texture. Secondary provides really nice non-performance texture in scenes when you're not working it. But you pretty much should always be working it. So work it. Okay, that's it. All right. So we have about 15 minutes. Anyone have any questions? Let me get some Tic Tacs because I have a sugar low and my throat is scratchy. You need to think of your questions. Okay, who took my Tic Tacs? All right, anyone who asks a question gets a Tic Tac. Oh, not that one. Oh, okay. Second roll. No question? Yeah.
Is there ever a time where you start with a primary action and your main focus receives?
Good job. Nice catch.
Yeah, thanks. And then becomes the secondary, so it's kind of like this overlap and it's almost like a phrase.
That's great. I should have included that. Sometimes what you're doing is we'll kind of start the scene. It'll kind of be the seed of the scene, and it will evolve into secondary. You've asked a couple great questions already. You get 2 Tic Tacs. Here, you get one to your girlfriend. Or your wife, sorry. They're married. Yeah, so you can be like, no, I just want to concentrate on my work. Damn it, I went to the mechanic, screwing something in. Whatever, forgive me. No, damn it, I just want to concentrate on what I'm doing. I don't want to get in trouble. And then, like, that was 100% turning away from them. You know, that's just like your compositional choice, it's your posing choice, it's your acting choice. 100% straight up primary. And then once you get there, yeah, it can totally turn into secondary. Maybe they'll cut to the reverse. And the person will be behind me, and I'll just be focusing. And what you do there is you really all you have is like facial to telegraph what you're doing and how you're coloring your secondary action. Like if the camera's just right here, and I'm focusing, concentrated. You need to commit to what that would look like. Don't just animate the head like wiggling. I might, but don't do what I do. Do what I say. No, but. Yeah, I mean, sometimes you're not seeing the whole action take place, and all you have is the head to kind of perform the secondary, and the shoulders and neck. So, if you can imagine, I'm doing it right now, and then kind of like this is an interruption, and I go back to doing whatever it is. Good, it's good. It's really good. I'll write that down. And that also kind of is a good segue into when a secondary turns into a primary. So like you're cleaning your gun and talking to someone like, yeah, we're gonna kill all of them. All right, it's time to go. Then it's become your gesture basically. No one else wants Tic Tacs? I mean, at least for a Tic Tac.
I would have a question regarding...
You get a Tic Tac just putting your hand up. Got it?
Yeah. Regarding the 7-Eleven club.
11-second club.
Because some of us weren't there at the October CG Con.
Yeah.
So what's it about?
The 11secondclub.com is a club. It's an online thing that, an animation mentor graduate started, but they started it after something called the 10-second club was offline for like 4 years. And basically, it's the exact same concept, but theirs is 11 seconds instead because the domain was taken, I guess. And they've got the best motto as well. If you've ever seen Spinal Tap, their motto is "This one goes to 11." Kind of cool. Anyway, what it is they put a audio file online, and everyone in the community who has the time downloads the audio file and creates an animation based on the audio file. It's 11 seconds long each time, which is kind of a fast clip if you have like a full-time job, I would say. It's like, 2.5 seconds a week of stuff with 2 characters. So 5 character seconds a week. There's normally 2 characters, by the way. Anyway, so it's kind of hard to get done if you have like a full-time job. But if you put a couple hours in on the weekend, here's a piece of advice. Every minute you put into learning animation is a minute that you improve. There's no such thing as sitting down at your desk and working when you're going backwards at all, and not even like stagnating. Because even when you stand up and you're like, man, I didn't do anything I like, none of this has worked out, I'm not going to be able to use any of this, you learn, what part of your workflow is not working, that you have to cut out of your workflow. You learn what is bad for you to try to do. So there's no time of wasting time practicing animation. Bless you. So anyway, I encourage everyone to just go to the 11-second club. It's almost like going to the gym. Like once you get your shoes on, like you're pretty much, you can get there. But if you don't put your shoes on, like you'll never go to the gym. So with the 11-second club, it's a long walk, the analogy, I'm sorry, but the 11-second club is kind of like download the audio file, download a rig, just get a rig. I like Bloke, he's nice. He's got some problems in his shoulders, neck, and head in the rotation order, but besides that, download the rig, and reference the rig into your scene, put the audio file on the timeline, and then, if you have it sitting around, you have it ready, you might just pose a couple things the first month, and then you've gotten better. You have another question?
Well,
Okay, follow-ups get a tic-tac-toe.
well, it would just know if it was mandatory to have it in treaty, or would it be in 2 weeks?
Oh, no. Most, like half the winners. Oh, and there's a win. You win something. You win an e-critique from Animation Mentor. So, which is a recorded video critique from a professional animator. And sometimes it's animators you've heard of, like Victor Navone or Dave Burgess, Pixar and DreamWorks, respectively. But no, I think like half the time the winner has been 2D. There's this one guy on there that's just fantastic. He's won like 4 times. That's why I say. Yeah, BJ Crawford.
Which ones did he do?
He did the one. The first one I saw him do was the. I'm not sure what we got here, Charlie. Yeah, wasn't it? Because he had the secondary action.
Yeah.
He had it on the phone, and then he put it. Yeah, so look at BJ Crawford's entry for, it's like August 2008 or something like that. I'm not sure what we've got here, Charlie, but if we've got what I think we've got something. You have a bad experience with that sound file?
Well, because they were asking us to use the sound
No.
to do
Yeah. I'm not trying to show off here, but if you can't recite word for word the dialogue that you've worked with 2 years later, you didn't listen to it enough. Okay? A project I worked on 6 years ago was for the city of Las Vegas, and it was this water drop, and he's like pointing out all the parts of a factory, and there's one scene where he goes like this. Oh boy, what's this? Could it be? I think so. It's an American Flow Control Series 2500 Resilient Wedge Ductile Gate Valve. So that was about 5 years ago. Can't sleep at night. Yeah. All right, last chance for Tic Tacs. Let you go a couple minutes early. It's hard to put TikTok in your mouth when you have a microphone there. All right, guys. Last question.
Yeah, I guess.
You don't want the floor one.
No, yeah.
Do you want to?
No, it's okay.
Secondary. You see that?
So I guess when you were talking about, you don't want the secondary to overpower what the primary is, but you want it to be powerful enough. I guess like the guy can persuade people to give him stuff, but they don't even know why they're doing it. So how do you know when you're taking it too far, but enough that it's telling what the subtext is? You know what I mean? Like it can be a big action, like you're saying, but.
It's unfortunately it's almost solely intuitive, and it's really hard to find that balance. What I would say is that start with repetitive, unrelated, and because that is where the line is the thinnest. Where when you cross the line and you've taken over the scene with a secondary, it'll be blatantly obvious to you. So, but if you're doing a related action, like talk to someone about going to war while you're sewing them up, you know what I mean, then there's a gray area there. Like, how big do you take it, you know? I guess the rule of thumb is that when you kind of have to break the action for them to make a point. Like when you have to go so far outside what that normal action would be for them to purposefully make a point, it's become primary. Like, you know what I mean? Like that person, like saying like, every single time you go into that battlefield, I die inside. And he says like, I don't care. You know, and really stick them hard that time, like that. Like where it's no longer secondary, where you've kind of really clearly and unmistakably broken the secondary action to do something like that.
Kind of like you almost like really thought about it, and show a thought process to do it.
Yeah, yeah.
Versus kind of like a
Pretty good way to put it. Yeah, like the thought process is there. Yeah. Okay, guys. Thanks a lot for your time. Hope you enjoyed it. All right. So I didn't forget this time. You can come up.